I'm Natalia Hepworth with BYU-Idaho Radio, and welcome to the Fulfilling the Mission podcast. On this podcast, we're exploring how faculty and administration are helping students become disciples of Jesus Christ. On today's episode, we have Matthew Maroon and Ethan Richards. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, just a little bit about them. Matthew is the chair of the marketing department in the College of Business and Communication. He graduated from BYU-Idaho in 2004 with a Bachelor of Science in Communication and Media Studies and a Master of Science in Media Management from Fordham Gabelli School of Business in 2009. And Ethan is a senior and a business management marketing major. Oh. And there will be more about you as you do more in your career.
Yeah,
so
that's the goal, at least.
Well, awesome. Well, Matthew, let's just start out with some of the offerings of the marketing department. Tell us about that and what you offer students.
Sure. So, one of the things that we've tried to do when we've created the program is to really kind of begin with the end in mind, right? We hear that from President Nelson, think celestial, those types of things. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to say, hey, what jobs are actually available in marketing? And then let's build our program so that it kind of funnels into those jobs. And so our program's somewhat new, I guess. It's about 6 years old. And what we did is we tried to start in two areas where we knew we were strong. One of those areas was digital marketing, and the other is professional selling. And so those were the two places where we were seeing a lot of people get jobs. And so we figured, hey, let's try to build a program that actually funnels into those two different areas. And so we've got certificates in each of those specific areas, but then we also have classes, kind of core classes for people who aren't necessarily going down that route. I think you're kind of trying to figure out your route still.
Right, yeah, a little bit of a mix of all sorts of things.
Yeah, and so there's still paths, I guess, that you can take to kind of become more of a generalist or get into other segments of marketing that also have robust careers.
Okay, very cool. So you offer a BS in marketing and associates and a minor, is that right?
Yeah, there's a minor as well.
Very awesome, very cool. So as far as your experience being at BYU-Idaho, what has it been like to be in an environment where we mix in discipleship with secular learning as well?
That's interesting. So my mom, actually right now is going to Oxford University in England. And so my wife and I are here and she's there. And so we'll talk and like compare notes. And she's like, this is super cool. It's, world famous, whatever. But like, wow, how different is BYU-I? And her talking about it and us listening, realizing like, she's like, yeah, I've got, personal tutors and everything, but BYU-I is focused on like the student. And like, I know that's the pitch, that's what we put up on the banners and stuff. But I think hearing her talk was realizing like, yeah, like in her lecture, she's like, it's just a lecture. Here, we talk in class, and then outside of class, we talk. Outside of class, we're texting. Like, I know, so Brother Maroon has been my teacher, or professor for a lot of classes. And I'll talk to him, and we have a personal relationship that's not connected to, well, you're not enrolled in my class right now. And so I think you can't really make a disciple leader unless you care about the person becoming a disciple leader. And that happens here with the personalization that professors have with students.
Yeah, great. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate hearing that, right? Like, I think a lot of times we hope that would be the answer because all of us who are in our department, many people in our college, we come from industry, and to say it, kind of straightly, bluntly, we didn't come here for the money, right? Like we have the opportunity to actually, make a difference in the lives of students, which I think is our primary motivator. And so what really what the payoff for us is seeing students like Ethan, like so many others that we've gotten to know over the years, really just kind of go into the world and do amazing things, both in their careers, but also within the church as disciples and really becoming that next generation of leaders.
Yeah, that's great. So in the Book of Mormon, there's a connection with industry and righteousness, and that's always something that I found to be interesting. Yeah. And I don't know, just you wouldn't really associate it, I guess, in a spiritual, thinking about it spiritually, like industry, righteousness. Why do those things connect? What do they have to do with each other? But being a business professor, have you seen those two things maybe connect in your own experience?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely seen, blessings that come from, keeping covenants and just trying to, understand who you are in the plan, I guess. And so, for my part, those blessings come, but there's also, temptation that comes along with that as well. And it's easy to, have the blessings like we see in the Book of Mormon with the Nephites and that pride cycle that, with that bounty can often come the ability to forget. And I think that's the important thing is how do you ground yourself and just make sure that you really are kind of remembering, the purpose of what you're doing and then the source of where those blessings come from. And so I think it's a thing, but I think it's also something that you have to kind of pay extra attention to so that it doesn't get the best of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe choosing to go down this path, how are you trying to be aware while still maintain your faith?
That's a good question. My spouse helps me a lot with that. Keeps me in check.
That's a good answer.
But I mean, not all of us are in that situation. So I think, as primary answer as it is, I think it's that daily scripture study. When you're checking in with the feeling of the Spirit, I think it'll then show you like, oh, that feeling is like different than what I've been feeling all day. Maybe something's out of check. So I feel like for me, I'll read my scriptures. Right now I'm in IBC, the Integrated Business Corps, where we run the businesses on campus. And there will be problems that I'm probably causing for other people that I wouldn't have thought of. And then I'll read my scriptures that morning and it'll talk about communication or it'll talk about working as a group. If it's like right now, we're Moroni and Come Follow Me, or Captain Moroni. And so reading that will remind me, oh, I've had these problems the last 3 days. It's probably because I've been doing this thing wrong. So I think a daily personal check-in for yourself is a way to keep you on track without having to rely on someone externally being able to tell you.
That's really cool. I like that you're very self-aware. It sounds like the Spirit's working on you too.
That's what I hope. Yeah, that's what I hope.
That's awesome. Well, you help run IBC and you have experience doing that.
Sure.
Tell us about that program.
Yeah.
We've talked about it with obviously all the business professors that we've interviewed.
Yeah.
But let me hear it from your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. So I was involved with the IBC program really from day one when I started at BYU-Idaho, and then had the opportunity to actually oversee the program. I'll give you the timeline to provide some context. I was asked to oversee the program in March of 2020, and so 2 weeks after saying yes, obviously COVID hits, and we got a whole new thing we have to figure out with IBC and everything else that was happening in the world. But what I like to do in terms of explaining IBC to people is help them understand that this isn't necessarily a program that's all about creating entrepreneurs and helping people become business people. It looks like that because
that's what I thought before he talked to me about it.
That's right. We put these students in this situation where they have to ideate, incubate, create, launch, run, and then shut down a business within a semester's time. And even though it looks like we're trying to create these entrepreneurs and we're trying to create these little I don't know, kind of Shark Tank type experiences for them, it's not about that at all. It's actually about developing soft skills. Because we all come from industry, we understand that the people that we want to work with are the people who we actually can get along with, the people who we know we can rely on, the people who we want to spend 40 plus hours a week with and just feel like we're really making an impact and doing good things. And so what IBC does is it kind of puts people in this pressure cooker. IBC kind of becomes the vessel by which these soft skills are taught. And what it allows students to do is to really not just focus on kind of the academic component and doing the work to kind of get the grade, but becoming a disciple leader in this kind of fiery environment that
emphasis on fiery.
It's probably a little unique from your other classes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, tell 100%. Me about your experience.
I agree. Like you get put in the pressure cooker and you soften up a lot. Like something when I was getting ready for this class, I was talking to him about it, like, hey, what do I need to prep for? And he was like, oh, it's not, all our other classes are, this is how you do financial analysis, this is how you create a marketing plan, this is how you test your things with consumers. This is how to not in Brother Maroon's words, how to not kill the people that you work with. And I would agree, because I think coming in, all of us, at least in my company, we were all very, thought we were pretty good at what we did, but then putting us in the group, you then get separated out into different parts. So finance, operations, marketing, and there are people in finance that have never done it before. Our current CMO has never done marketing before, but she was like, I want to try something I've never done. And so those hard skills, those marketing skills, obviously anyone can learn them because they can come to college and pick them up. The soft skills is what we spend most of our time trying to fix in order to get those solutions we're looking for. So if you asked anyone in my company, what are your problems right now? They might be like, oh, our inventory isn't here on time, or oh, we got docked for these financial problems. But then if you go deeper, it's, oh, well, this person didn't talk to this person didn't listen to this person. And so for this actually whole last week, we've been talking as a company, how do we be more honest with each other? How do we talk about the real problems? Hey, what you're saying is hurting my feelings. What's going on here? And so I think it's been way more of an eye-opener of this is what the real world looks like, much more than what are the shortcuts you can use on Excel.
So what does the future of IBC look like since you're directing that? What do you think?
Well, fortunately, I'm no longer directing it because it is a little bit of an undertaking, but still very involved in the role as chair. But I think, the future, I think is, it's how do we scale it, right? What's being taught in IBC isn't unique to what business students need. It really is something that I would argue any student at BYU-Idaho could benefit from, right? Because
I think that's how we feel about reporting and
right?
communication major. I'm like,
totally fair.
Everyone need to go to court.
Totally fair.
That's awesome,
and I think it's, obviously there's some passion there. But if you think of kind of, the university's direction around experiential learning, I can't think of any other experience that provides the level of experiential learning that you're going to get in IBC versus anything else that's available. And the reason for that is because it really does allow the students to kind of run everything in a framework that allows them to kind of move forward so they're not just spinning the wheels, but also again take that time for reflection. I think in the learning model, I think a lot of times the learning happens during the reflection and taking the time to actually, think about what are we doing, why are we doing it, and then iterating is what we call it in business. But, I guess in a more spiritual sense, it's kind of, pondering and applying and how do I actually make those changes to do better and to become better. And again, those are principles that I think are universal, and we'd love it if we could have, music students in IBC, if we could have art students in IBC, to have those opportunities to really develop those soft skills and ultimately, in my opinion, become more employable.
Absolutely. Did you want to add to that?
No, I was just gonna say, in our company, we obviously have finance, marketing, operations people, but we also have someone on our finance team who's apparel design. And for her major, it's required if she wants to be able to then go create her own studio. I'm just thinking how beneficial it is for me. In a couple weeks, I'll be in the finance rotation. Right now I'm in marketing, which is my major, but then I'm in finance and then I'm in operations. And aside from the classes that I have that are required for me to graduate, I wouldn't have any compassion, I think, for someone in the finance department in my future career, or someone in operations. I'd probably think why can't we just get this fixed? But being in those roles, even if it's just for a couple weeks, at least I get, like he talked about, become maybe a little bit more marketable for myself, to be able to go in and be like, not only do I know marketing, I can also be a team player and play well with coming up with products that I know that I can talk to operations about. I know I can work with finance, that these things are actually going to be able to be bankrolled instead of just living in this marketing bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like there's opportunities to lead and opportunities to follow, and that's something that as disciples we have to learn how to do and when to step into which role. How are you teaching those things in the classroom?
in IBC or just in other classrooms?
Just in other classrooms.
In other classrooms?
In the marketing department.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think we maybe lean on IBC to kind of, teach those principles because it's so overt in terms of you're in these designated leadership positions. Now you're designated as more of an individual contributor or whatever. And so that's why I love the program, is because it allows us to do that, pretty consistently and with intent. In the classroom, I think sometimes it's a little more challenging. We can do group projects, and I think there are some natural, kind of things that happen where certain people are going to step up and become leaders, and others are going to, be more comfortable following. But I don't necessarily have the opportunity to kind of, talk to people about, kind of those experiences. It's more of kind of, I don't know, I feel like I'm often, kind of, doing triage on like, hey, so-and-so is not pulling their weight and I'm having to do everything. And I don't know that that's the lesson I necessarily want to teach. I think it's a lesson that everyone has to learn. But I love the opportunity that IBC affords to actually have an intentional conversation of what does it mean to be a leader, and then what does it mean to be a follower and to be someone who can still make an impact and influence, but without having that leadership title.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I play into that?
Please.
I think something that BYU also offers that helps kind of train up in that is our society structure. And the fact that, so right now we work with each other in the marketing society on campus, a little shameless plug. And something there that we've been working on the last couple of weeks is, okay, this is our responsibility. This is what we have to execute. If it doesn't get done, it falls at your feet. And I think the ownership, that's something I've had to realize is like, okay, these things didn't get done. We told the members of our society they would have these, products by this time. Ultimately, it comes back to me, and to be able to take ownership of that is something that I think Christ definitely would want his disciples to be able to, really encompass. And so I think whether you're an IBC, whether you're in a society, there are strong opportunities that BYU creates for us to have real world experience, but that real world experience all ties into what a disciple needs.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of cross breeding there.
Yeah, I love that.
So for people who are thinking about majoring in what you're doing right now in marketing, what advice do you have for them?
I would say 100% come to the Marketing Society to learn if that's what you want to do. But also, we went with an expedition to Kansas City last week, making it sound like we hang out every weekend. But
That's okay.
Yeah, maybe we do. We'll hang out next weekend. But when we were in Kansas City, something the employers there were talking to us about is like, hey, your major doesn't define the rest of your future, but what you major in will help you land those first couple jobs. Something the marketing department and the business management department lean really heavily on are employable skills and knowing who you want to go work for and then knowing them personally. And so I'd been in other majors before, and then when I moved into this major, it totally changed my vision from being like, wow, I really hope I could get this job that I want, to being like, if I want to go work at Colgate-Palmolive, I'm going to go talk to these 4 people who are in this role I want. One of them is going to be a BYU alumni because they're everywhere. And then the other 4 are going to tell me, this is how you land this role. This is what you need to prepare. This is what you should put on your resume. And so this department, even if you're going to be in a different major and you don't want to go into marketing, I would still talk to people in this department to say, how do I get that dream job? Because that's what these guys are focused on, is getting us not just enough credit hours, but rather feeling solid that I know me and my family have a real job after this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I love coming into your office area where you see pictures of the students that were here before who've gone on to work for pretty big names.
Sure.
And you've worked for some pretty big names as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your resume? Because it's just intriguing.
Sure, not a problem. So I was a BYU-Idaho graduate in 2004. And I think you mentioned I was a communications major. So go comm people. Yes. But when I graduated, honestly, I didn't have much direction in terms of where I was going. And in full transparency, I kind of got lucky. I had a comm professor who happened to have a friend who she had talked to, whose husband was actually looking for interns, and it was at the Nielsen Company. They're the company that does like the TV ratings, and this was out in New York City. And I had kind of the options I was kind of mulling over was going home and starting a lawnmower business, lawn mowing business, even though I have severe allergies.
It's fine. Hay fever is fine.
I could work through it. Or applying for this internship that I had really maybe even no business applying for, given my experience and maybe my drive. But long story short, getting that internship, moving to New York City, completely changed my perspective on one, what was out there in terms of job opportunities. I think that's why it's so great these expeditions can get students in the door of these companies and allow them to kind of see, behind the curtain of just how the magic is made, kind of a thing. But then two, gaining the confidence of like, hey, my BYU-Idaho education could hang with other people who I was working with who had gone to Notre Dame, Harvard, the Wellesley College for Women, and all these prestigious places that I just kind of felt a little insecure around, because here I am coming from Rexburg and didn't really know where I fit. But I learned really quickly that I did belong and that I could hang and I was one of the people that was often getting promoted before these other people because of the skills that I had learned at BYU-Idaho of how to be scrappy, how to just get stuff done, how to figure things out when you don't necessarily have all the answers.
And I'm sure your disciple leadership.
Absolutely, yeah.
Stood out.
Yeah, it's just that willingness to always kind of be better and try to do more, I think, is something that we do a really nice job here at BYU-Idaho of encouraging our students. And so I ended up spending 6.5 years at Nielsen, working first as a data analyst, and then moving into an account management role, and then had the opportunity to take a job at Microsoft, which for me was a dream, having grown up in the Seattle area. It meant that I got a couple free trips home to see my family, and it also meant that I got to work for a company that whose vision I really aligned to in terms of making the world a better place through technology, and a lot of the philanthropic things that they do, I really resonated with me. So I love the opportunity, having the opportunity to work in again kind of on the sales side of things. Microsoft moved me in several different positions where I was able to learn and really just kind of round out my own experience and knowledge of kind of what's out there in the digital space. And just had a great time. I was very fortunate to have the career I've had, and then the career that I have currently, where I honestly feel like I've been able to have 2 dream jobs in a single lifetime, and I feel fortunate for that.
That's pretty cool. How have you used that experience to help the students?
I think a lot of it is credibility. I think we lose a lot of credibility when we come into the classroom. At least we don't have to wear ties anymore. So thank you, President Meredith, for that.
You still look so professional, though. So it's fine.
I'm gonna try. But I think having that credibility for one, I think is helpful. But I think it's just the experience. One of the reasons I wanted to come back and teach at BYU-Idaho was to just show, hey, there's this kid who came here and really wasn't much of a student. Like I was all right, but I wasn't getting involved in societies. I wasn't, doing the extracurricular activities that you usually, think of when you think of like top performers in a company. But I did have, I did have some decent work ethic, and I did have, some other things going for me that allowed me to learn along the way. I didn't always have a lot of this stuff I had to figure out on my own, like finding mentors, like understanding the value of networking, the value of talking to people, being willing to take risks in your career and take jobs that you might not be qualified for or really know much about. I had to learn some of that stuff on my own, but as I just saw my career kind of blossom into something that I just never could have imagined, that was really, inspiring for me to want to help students kind of see that in themselves and help them understand hey, you don't have to be that 4.0 student. You don't have to be that. We had class presidents when I was at BYU-Idaho. Yeah. You don't have to be that person in order to be successful. Right. Really, it's aligning yourself with understanding what God's will is for you and being willing to walk through those doors that he opens for you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, we've been jump scaring people with their Rate My Professor ratings, but we won't do that in this setting. But I will ask you, how would you rate your professor?
A real life mentor. That's how I'd say it. So definitely 5 out of 5. In fact, we were in a class once where I thought he was trying to scare people out of the class, but he gave a whole overview. So this is everything we're talking about. If this is not the class for you, I'll walk out the door and you can leave now. And waited in the room. Some people were kind of trying to figure out if they're going to leave, and I was like, don't leave. Brother Maroon is super cool. He's really nice. I don't know why he's doing this whole walk out of the room thing.
This is new for him.
Yeah, I was like, he just wants less things to grade. Just kidding. No, but I just remember being like, no, you guys got to stay. Like you don't know yet what he has to offer. And so for me, it's been really impactful because he's connected me to a bunch of other mentors with different perspectives that have been like, this is what you need. And so, I mean, even if it's just to pitch Microsoft tools all the time, I think he has context that I can't have yet.
Yeah.
And so it gives me a lot of perspective to know which direction to go.
That's cool. Well, this relationship is unique. This is really cool. It's unique, but it also isn't unique because these types of things can happen at BYU-Idaho, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That was very earnest. I won't keep asking you questions, but I have 2 more questions that are on my mind.
Sure.
So you've had maybe a non-traditional upbringing, as we probably would say in the church.
Sure.
Where your father wasn't a member, is that correct? And your mom was maybe a little inactive, but you guys still got baptized, but maybe didn't continue going to church. I know it was scattered throughout your years. And the only reason I know that is because you interviewed with us for another podcast with the radio station. But I got to learn a little bit about you, which I found quite interesting. If you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit about that experience and maybe how that has helped you reach out to the one here at BYU-Idaho.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I mean, as you said, my background is a little non-traditional in terms of what we think about when we think of members of the church or maybe even faculty at BYU-Idaho. My mom, I guess I have to start with her because she was baptized actually when she was a little girl. And she lived out in the middle of nowhere in Washington, and she lived in a little mountain town. And the way she would describe it is, there were these 2 sister missionaries who would just drive on these mountain roads, and she knew the Spirit was with them because the way they drove on those roads, like nobody else could survive the way they would drive on these old dirt roads. Wow. And so, long story short, her family was baptized. I think she was probably right around 8 or so. And she always said that, those were some of the happiest times of my life is when my family was going to church and was active. And, unfortunately, there were a lot of vices and things that, my grandparents, kind of struggled with, and all of them eventually went inactive. But fast forward several years later, my mom's in the Navy, and she ends up getting pregnant, kind of unexpectedly. And she, I didn't share this, but I'll share it now. She was in a situation where she had to make a choice, and this is the 70s. This is just a couple years after Roe v. Wade, and where she was stationed at the time in Puerto Rico in Puerto Rico, abortion was not legal. However, it was legal in the States, and so she actually ended up flying back to one of the bases in Virginia, and actually went to a family planning center there to, likely go through with the procedure of getting an abortion. In the moment that she actually walked up to the door, the way she explains it is she put her hand out to kind of open the door, and she just had this really strong feeling that she should not go through with that. And as she describes it, she's like, that's the first time that I felt the Holy Spirit in my life. And I think it was a testimony to her that she needed to have that child who ended up being me, gratefully. And I think the impact for her was, again, she wasn't a member of the church, but she was spiritual, and she had this connection to God. That she knew that after I was born that I needed to get a baby's blessing. She knew that, and she knew enough about the church to do that. She knew that when we turned 8, we were eligible to get baptized, and so missionaries would come and we'd go to church the 2 times or whatever that was required. And so I could get baptized. Yeah. That's right. Hit the number, and then I got baptized when I was 8. But when I was baptized when I was 8, like I said, the missionaries had actually, taught me the lessons. And one of the things that they taught me that just really stuck with me until now is just the power of prayer and developing that relationship with God. And that was something that, for whatever reason, as an 8-year-old, I just really connected to. And I made sure that I was saying my prayers every night. And I remember staying the night at friends' houses, people who weren't religious or members of the church or anything. And, before we go to bed, just like, oh, hold on, man, I got to say my prayers, right? And, I'd say my own little, my own prayer in my head or whatever. And then it was like, all right, we're good now. And then we'd talk.
Jesus thought you were cool.
Totally, right? Yeah. And so I'd say my prayer, and then we'd talk in the middle, all through the night or whatever, and not get any sleep. But that's just, but it was that relationship I was building that became so powerful for me when I needed to kind of draw upon it, because then later on, as I was in high school, kind of start seeing my friends getting involved in things that I just wasn't into. I just wasn't really, looking for, and I just realized, hey, I need some new friends, and so I felt like I had the relationship was in place where I could ask God for a favor, and in fact, it was in some ways it was almost cutting a deal, where I was basically kind of like, okay, God, I need new friends, so how about if I go back to church, you provide me with new friends? And that was my prayer, and
I'm sure he was like, that's easy.
It was kind of, it's all kind of history now, but ended up going back to church and making some of the best friends that, anyone can make at that age. And, the rest is history. Ended up serving a mission when I was 19, came here to BYU-Idaho, had an incredible experience. Moved to New York City, met my wife. We've got 4 lovely children, and have done some pretty incredible things since then.
Wow, that's amazing. And how has that helped you reach out to the students here who maybe have had non-traditional experience?
I think it's just understanding that we all have our story, right? Regardless of whether or not you grew up in the church, or maybe it's a story that's similar to mine where it's a little non-traditional. We all have that. We all have our story, and hopefully we all have that connection to God and that reason for why we're here. I know for me, it's easy to just kind of connect with students who maybe feel a little out of place. I remember when I came here, I felt a little out of place. I had never lived in kind of an LDS community. I remember the first time I took a trip down to Utah, I was convinced I was going to Zion.
Love that.
So there was just a lot I had to learn still. And as you learn it, sometimes you're disappointed, right? Salt Lake wasn't Zion. I had to learn that the hard way.
Zion is pending.
That's right. It's a work in progress.
It's a sweeping streets.
WIP. And so, but I think it's just really understanding that, hey, none of us really have it all figured out. Even those who maybe come from whatever, those prestigious families, or those cookie cutter ones that we all think are just so perfect and got everything together. I'm old enough to realize now that that's rarely the case, right? And that we all need one another in order to build a community of saints that will allow us to get better and hopefully someday see the face of God again.
I love that, and I'm sure this is probably why you just connect with him so well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I would agree. I think Brother Maroon just treats you like a human. And so instead of high school, instead of a middle school, or see where you're going, see where you're on your way to, let me help you get there. Yeah, 100%. I think I've been surprised because you're talking about, oh, this is a unique relationship. And it just made me think about, I actually have so many friends that have been like, oh, you need this thing? You should go talk to this professor. Or you need to go talk to this. We actually have someone in our society right now who's making a whole sheet of, you got questions about any of these things, this is the contact person for this professor that specializes. Yeah. And I think I haven't been to a different university. I almost did. And then the Spirit said, you're going to this one. A little against my will, but I'm so glad I'm here. Yeah. And I've learned that that's not normal. That being able to be...
It's like a Rexburg thing,
yeah,
a
exactly.
BYU-Idaho
it's a BYU-Idaho thing.
Who would actually choose it? But then the Holy Ghost teaches you why.
Exactly. Yeah. You come here and you realize oh, this professor just actually has all these hours in their office. for me to come. I remember I used to be a political science major. I changed to marketing. I went down to the advising office and I wanted to chat with someone from political science to be like, what are my career paths? We were talking about all the things I want to do. And he's like, oh, you're just in the wrong major. And my first thought was like, okay, when I go down here, like I need to, he's going to sell me on political science because that's what these guys do, like he's a political science guy. But that's not how the professors are. That's not how the advisors are. He was like, oh, no, you should go into marketing. That's like everything you're telling me, that's what you want. Same thing. All these professors, they're not going to be like, you need to be in finance because I'm in finance. They're going to be like, if you want, you can learn these things, but I am actually saying you should go talk to these 3 other people.
I love that.
So
very cool. And this diagram sounds so helpful. You should post it.
Yeah, seriously.
That's really cool.
Yeah, come talk to the marketing department. They'll give it to you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, last question. We'll start with you, Ethan. Okay. How are you fulfilling the mission at BYU-Idaho?
I think there's a myriad of things that we can say that we're doing, like, oh, we're in the society, or oh, we're, leading this thing out. But I think in reality, when I leave here, if I am better than when I came, then I think that was the purpose. If I'm now more able to help out in God's kingdom because of the stability that I have here, or because of the principles that I have here, then it was worth it. There are things in my calling that I'm able to do now at church that I couldn't have done without the business classes and the soft skills that I had to learn here. And so I think as long as I walk away better, that's what this was all here for.
Good. What about you, Matthew Maroon?
So I really appreciate that I guess it was then President Bednar, called BYU-Idaho a disciple preparation center. And as I've really thought about kind of what that means and what it means kind of in my role as a faculty member at BYU-Idaho, it really has helped me to make sure that I am doing everything I can to create disciples, right? And making sure that we're not only talking about the secular, things that I'm passionate about and I feel like is really going to prepare students to get jobs, but more importantly, allowing us to kind of nurture that spiritual side of student development, because this is a time that, whether they know it or not, that they're probably going to be having spiritual discussions more often than maybe any other time in their lives. And so being able to kind of lean into that and be willing to, actually have a spiritual thought in class, to actually, talk about maybe, hard things that might be happening in their lives, or easy things like general conference, but really just kind of, again, thinking celestial to some degree, and knowing that that's why we're here. You're going to get a great education. You're going to be able to hang with anybody else in the rest of the country. I can promise that because I've seen it. But what you're going to get in addition to that is hopefully a testimony and understanding who you are as a child of God and the role that you play in His plan.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing today. Ethan Richards, Matthew Maroon, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.